It's time for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us are Jonathan Liew from The Guardian, Isaan Khan from The Daily Mail. Good to see you, gents. Welcome along to you both. We'll speak to you shortly, but let's quickly run you through the back pages as we have them. So, front page of the Telegraph sports section looks like this. The headline there, FA at risk of Paquetá legal action as the West Ham midfielder is cleared of 4 spot-fixing charges. The picture there, though, of Chris Woakes, the England fast bowler, grimacing in pain after suffering a suspected dislocated shoulder while fielding on the boundary at the Oval. Let's take you to the Times. England fears for Woakes. Team attack leader sent for scan after suffering shoulder injury. You can see there top right as well, Paquetá's relief at being cleared. What about The Guardian? Well, they say West Ham have stood by and Paquetá cleared of spot fixing after a 2-year FA investigation. Gus Atkinson, perhaps the pick of the bowlers, as England took 6 wickets on the opening day of this 5th test. And there on the right-hand side, Max Verstappen saying that he will stay at Red Bull Racing at least next year. He's contracted until 2028. Eye looks like this. Woakes worry pace bowler leaves Oval with arm in sling after shoulder injury, and then again the Lucas Paquetá story. And on the left there, Isaac staying put unless Toon find 2 strikers as replacements, but of course he's training on his own at his former club Real Sociedad. And back page of the Mirror, Brazilian's nightmare is over. Relief for Hammer star Paquetá's charges not proven in betting probe. And then you can see there a slightly different take on the Alexander Isak story there. Isak is in Spain on red alert. We know that Liverpool certainly have made an informal request to find out about his future at Newcastle. Welcome once again to Jonathan and to Isaan. OK, let's start off then at the Oval. I have to say, a pretty bizarre day, Jonathan. I don't know what was in the water in South London, but we had a bit of everything. You know, we had obviously rain delays. We had a kind of really uneven bowling performance from a much changed side, and we had this Woakes injury. What was your take on everything overall, but particularly the situation with Chris Woakes?
Yeah, it didn't look good, did it? I mean, right near the end of the day's play, whether it's a dislocation, whether it's a pulled muscle or a sprain, I think, you know, I'm no medical expert, but I think people are saying that it is incredibly unlikely that he will bowl again in this test and therefore this series, which, you know, I think although it is a freak accident that, you know, it's the sort of diving for the ball in the outfield that could happen to anyone, I think it does underline a little bit how England have ended up in this situation where Woakes is the only fast bowler who's playing all 5 tests. You have Stokes, who is injured, Carson and Archer, who have had to be rested, and now bringing in Jamie Overton and Josh Tongue and Gus Atkinson, who, quite frankly, looked quite inconsistent and off the pace for large parts of the day. It was quite indifferent bowling performance, even though they are well in the game. You know, India 200 for 6. Given the overheads, given the fact that they won the toss 5th time in the series and got to bowl first, given the amount of grass on the pitch, I think it's 8 millimetres of grass on the pitch, you would say that England would expect even in a truncated day to make more inroads, and they did in fact get lucky with the run out. Josh Tongue obviously bowled a couple of jaffers along with some, you know, I guess pies and some other filth. So England actually got quite lucky today until you get to that Woakes incident towards the end of the day, which I think is symptomatic of, I think, just how inconsistent they've been through the series, especially in terms of their bowling attack, and the fact that they are going to have to take another 14 Indian wickets on this pitch without one of their main fast bowlers. That is a worry for them going forward.
Yeah, I mean, cricket vernacular is so funny, isn't it? Pies and filth. But I think on this occasion, it's absolutely merited. It was so, as I said, uneven, but I think maybe I was being a bit kind. I think, you know, inevitable there's going to be, you know, a bit of a shift when you've got so many changes. But Isaan, let me come to you on Woakes, because I think it also underlines kind of a bit of frailty amongst this England bowling attack. How much of a concern is that, not just for this test match, but ultimately for the next few months in the build-up to the Ashes?
Yeah, no, it's a massive concern. The lineup was already out of kilter once Ben Stokes, his injury ruled him out of the test match. And as we've seen with the other bowlers today, in terms of consistency wise, it's been a real struggle. We've seen Josh Tongue 1 minute bowling one towards like the slip cordon. We've seen obviously Gus Atkinson was on the money, but in terms of consistency overall, it's been a real slog out there. And Wokes, 36-year-old, who's obviously playing now all 5 tests, he's offered that consistency, he's offered that control, and with the extra seamer on this green pitch, with him now obviously out of this test, and who knows how much longer down the line too. It's in terms of the balance, it really does affect things going forward, and it will be a real concern. Obviously, right now we've got a green pitch, and Wokes obviously can bowl that full length and seam and swing the ball. But looking towards the future, it's a real dilemma in that case too.
We know that England want to try and play the best cricket. Want to save those boundaries when they can, when they're in the field. But ultimately, given the damage that's been done, was it worth it? Was it just simply freaking unlucky? Or do you think that actually, do you know what, he could have been thinking, well, maybe I just let this one go for 4?
I don't think it's healthy to get into that mindset in the field. And I don't actually think it prevents injuries either. If you're diving for a ball, if you're trying to stop something, if you're actually approaching the game in a half-hearted fashion, I think that can actually lead to as many injuries as it prevents. The wider issue here is why is Wokes, the only player? Why is Wokes playing his 5th test of the summer? Because we talk about managing an attack, and England have had months to prepare for this series, and then going into the Ashes this winter. And the whole point of having a battery of 6 or 7, oven-ready fast bowlers, so to speak, or bowlers that you can unsheath at some point during the series, is that you withdraw them and you rotate them before they get into the red zone, before they need to be rested, before they become so indispensable that you can't afford to lose them. Stokes has already gone over the red line. We then have Gus Atkinson, who couldn't even get a game for Surrey, and had to play for Surrey seconds to try and get some match practice. You have Jamie Overton thrown in, who's taken 2 red ball wickets in the last 2 years. And that's the issue that England have found themselves in, where they are over bowling some of their bowlers. Stokes obviously springs to mind, and others are struggling for rhythm. So managing attack, it's not just about injury and recuperation. It's about maintaining your attack in some kind of rhythm. And I think that's the part that England have neglected a little bit.
Can I just ask you both briefly, if you can, guys, with your answers? In terms of England now, looking at that Ashes series, it will start to really loom large, but who would you go for as your kind of pick of a bowling attack? Because clearly, if England want to win the Ashes, they've got to take 20 wickets. You'd think more than once to get the earn back. So who would you go with? And what sort of place are they in? Jonathan, you first, and Isaan, you to finish.
I think it's unlikely that anyone's going to get through the full 5 test series. So you rotate based on you rotate Archer, Cast, hopefully Mark Wood is fit by then, and Atkinson based on how they're getting along. I think you basically try and play all of them for 3 or 4 tests, and I would give Wokes the new ball.
Okay, Isaan, what do you think?
Well, definitely you'd have Archer, Cast and Wood with the pace in Australia that they'll obviously share the ball across the 5 tests, and Wokes obviously he adds that control. In terms of spin, I suppose there's a conversation to be had there in terms of whether Shoaib Bashir could be relied upon for that series, whether Dawson somehow gets himself in the fold. Obviously he was dropped for this test, but whether for Australia he's given a look in. So the spin department will be quite an interesting one too. Yeah,
and of course, obviously, in terms of this Test match, you're looking at Bethel and Root, sorting that out, and you never know what role that might be able to play. Okay, well, we'll see. We'll obviously see, how Chris Wokes shapes up and what happens now for the remainder of this Test match. But yeah, as I say, it was quite freakish, wasn't it, at times? And especially with that kind of very looming black cloud over the oval, it just felt, as I say, it felt very strange today. Let's just switch, shall we, to another focus, and it's the other story that's really dominated the back pages, and that's Lucas Paquetá. And as we've been reporting here on Sky Sports News, has been cleared of these 4 charges. If we look at the back page of the Mirror, that's the headline: cleared. Relief for Hamas star Paquetá, charges not proven in betting probe. Brazilian's nightmare is over. Isaan, if I come to you on this, I mean, it's been a 2-year FA investigation. First of all, how do you feel that might have affected him as a player?
Oh, massively. Regardless of mental strength of footballers, which is obviously very strong to be competing at such a high level. This would affect any player. To have this looming over a person for 2 years and to now finally be cleared, you can't imagine the strain this will have caused. You've got to remember as well, in this period, this case has cost him that £80 million move to Man City when things were looking really rosy for him. So not only on the field has it affected things in terms of his career progression, off the field this would have been an absolute nightmare to contend with too. Going forward, or I suppose all he can do now is focus on his career, knowing that this is put to bed. This is he's cleared. He can now fully focus on his playing career. But that's easy said after what must have been a torturous 2 years with West Ham as well. In terms of their transfers thus far, they've arguably had a struggling window. So players like Paquetá will be absolutely crucial for them next season.
Obviously, we know that that there are other things that need to be sorted in the meantime. The FA won't sort of comment on this until they get full written reasons, and Lucas Paquetá himself could consider what he does next in that regard. But let's focus on matters on the pitch, Jonathan. And I suppose if you're Graham Potter, you're thinking, all right, here's a player who we know what influence he can have. Do you feel like how he manages him at this point is critical? And what about what he can offer? Does it feel like it's a little bit of a free hit now for Lucas Paquetá this coming season?
I mean, I don't know if it's a free hit. I think it speaks volumes that Graham Potter has been really impressed and has talked him up at every opportunity during the last few months, not knowing the outcome of this charge or how the case would go, but that Potter has been impressed with his application, his dedication, his demeanour, in what I can only imagine are incredibly difficult circumstances for him and the club. And so that suggests to me, as someone who, as a coach who is very much big on team ethic and everyone buying into the collective, that suggests to me that Potter does feel that does see a future for Paquetá and potentially quite a big future at West Ham. He's got 1 year left on his contract. I think there will always be a temptation to cash in at West Ham if a bid comes in. But I think there is a real opportunity for a club and a team that has, I think, been struggling, like certainly towards the back end of last season, struggling a little bit for creativity, for a little bit of bite in the middle of the pitch. I think there was a real role for Paquetá to an unleashed Paquetá to play some of his best football for West Ham.
In the back page of The Guardian, that they say West Ham have stood by him. And just, riffing on what you've just said, Jonathan, Isaan, what is the difference for West Ham, when you have Lucas Paquetá fit and firing and influential as he is on the pitch, in terms of how their season might sort of pan out? I mean, is he the sort of player that can, that can take you comfortably to a top 10 finish rather than West Ham being those sort of lower reaches of the table that we've seen in some of the recent seasons?
He's definitely a very good player. I don't know if him on his own can take West Ham to the top half of the table, but yeah, if he's firing on all cylinders, he'll go a long way towards West Ham finishing in a respectable position next season. Of course, they've lost Mohamed Kudus to Tottenham, which is a monumental blow to them. And in terms of the transfer window thus far, it's not gone particularly to plan for them. So it'll be players like Paquetá that they'll absolutely need to keep and hope that they can hit the ground running. So if he does stay, he will be an important piece of their jigsaw for Graham Potter next season.
Yeah, it feels like it's very much still a bit of a rebuild on at the moment at the London Stadium. OK, guys, thank you for the moment. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning's newspapers, including this in The Guardian. Max Verstappen insists he will race with Red Bull in 2026. We'll see you in a couple of minutes. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to you at home. Welcome back to Jonathan Liew from The Guardian and Isaan Khan from the Daily Mail. Let's look at The Sun. Let's talk transfers. And Isaan looks, interesting as always at Manchester United. And the situation in terms of strikers is really developing. It says here, Højlund, Šeško's got to get past me. Interesting, one of the little, details here in the first part of the piece is the fact that he, after scoring against Bournemouth twice, he's there in the mix zone. And often players hide away, pretend to be on their phones, don't want to talk to anyone. He's there going, does anyone want to talk to me? I wonder how does this dynamic look for you? Benjamin Šeško being heavily linked with Manchester United, Rasmus Højlund wanting to remain their number one striker.
Well, yeah, from the actions, you can clearly see he's worried. He obviously knows and can sense the pressure he's under after last season. On the pitch, he's always had that drive, that work ethic, and you can see he's trying hard. But in terms of end products and goals, he's really struggled to inevitably at a club like Manchester United, who have got big ambitions going forward. That drive and running around and putting that shift in only takes you so far. And a player like Benjamin Šeško, who's of course been courted by a number of clubs and admired by a number of clubs, if Manchester United can get a play like that, he'll slot straight in and will be in the starting lineup, and Højlund will have to contend with the bench and trying to wiggle his way into the starting 11. So it's no surprise that he's being bullish after scoring these recent goals and is clinging on to dear life for his place at Man United. But it's been long clear that Man United want a striker. It's not news to anyone. That's their stance and their desire for a while now. So all Højlund can do, I suppose, is keep on playing well in the next pre-season matches and just hope that he does enough to show that when a new striker does come, which obviously seems the way things are going, that he is able to compete for that top position up front.
Let's have a little look at the back page of the Star. Let's stay with strikers. In fact, that is simply the headline back page of the Star. How Waiters Rebel pair train alone. Isak and Wissa step up, push for two moves. Obviously, for Isak potentially away and for Wissa potentially in at St James's Park. How likely do you think it is, Jonathan, that we get either or potentially both of these moves happening before the deadline, especially if they're starting to agitate a little bit in this sense?
Yeah, I saw one story saying that Newcastle weren't going to let Isak go until they'd signed two replacement strikers. And at the rate that Newcastle have been doing deals this window, that means Isak's probably there for another 4 or 5 years at least. They obviously want Wissa. I think they see Wissa as more of a Callum Wilson replacement. I think the problem for Isak in terms of, I think I may have said this last week, in terms of getting the move that he so clearly wants out of Newcastle, is that none of the teams that he would realistically move to and would be able to pay the sort of fee that Newcastle are demanding have to sign a striker before the end of the window. Liverpool obviously have done their business. Arsenal have done their business. It's hard to see too many other suitors for him. So that is going to make it harder for Isak to get his move this window, because it's not a situation where Newcastle can put another club over a barrel and say you need this guy, and you're going to pay what we demand, because that simply isn't the case. The fact that Newcastle are obviously going to want probably two replacements before they let him go does complicate matters, because frankly there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of decisiveness and positive action behind the scenes at Newcastle this summer, and that is what slowed things down. That's clearly what has frustrated Isak so much.
Where do you see the futures of these two that are pictured in the back page of the Star then, Isaan? As Andrew said, do you agree probably to stay at St James's Park and therefore Wissa not able to come in, or what do you think?
It's hard to say, but with the way this is rumbling on, it does seem as though Liverpool have a real shot at getting Isak before this window closes. Eddie Howe, of course, recently said how Isak wasn't on this pre-season tour of Asia for Newcastle because of a thigh strain. But then just the other day, he says that he has no control over Isak's future, and it's very bizarre that he's training now with Real Sociedad, which is obviously his previous club. He's using their facilities, which you can't imagine Newcastle will be too pleased with. So in terms of the direction, it does seem as though something could arise from this, and Liverpool have already tentatively, well, from an informal aspect, registered their interest in Isak. So it wouldn't surprise me if that deal started to pick up momentum in the coming weeks. And if that does happen, then Wisa to Newcastle pretty much makes sense in that regard.
We just approaching kind of a couple of minutes to go. Let's talk Formula One. Obviously, we've got the final race before the summer break, which is the Hungarian Grand Prix. And Jonathan, in your paper in The Guardian, Giles Richards, your colleague, has written, Verstappen insists he will race with Red Bull in 2026. However, he didn't confirm he would see out the rest of his contract with Red Bull that runs until 2028. So the Red Bull kind of house of cards is still just about holding firm despite the departure of Christian Horner. Boost for them, but is it the right move for Max to stay put when the regulations change?
Yeah, I think the fact that he hasn't committed to all the way to 2028 is telling, and it's probably quite smart, actually. I mean, the case that this really evokes to me is Sebastian Vettel, who I had to look this up because I couldn't believe it, but Vettel was actually younger than Verstappen is now. He was 26 when he won his fourth world title with Red Bull, and chose to commit to Ferrari for 3 years, which, I guess in retrospect you would say was a huge gamble. Maybe didn't feel like such a huge gamble at the time, but he never won another world title. And I think that the fact that Verstappen is clearly keeping his options open, seeing who adapts best to the new rule changes, and so he's almost kind of able to pick his team or his suitor in 2027. It might actually be quite a smart move, because the way that this sport works, it does kind of work in big waves of momentum, and if you kind of miss the bus, if you end up at the wrong team for 2 or 3 years, not only does that kind of hijack a certain period of your career, but you end up almost losing that time to younger and fresher drivers. So Verstappen is the quadruple world champion, and he clearly wants to stay there because he's keeping his options open.
Just really, really briefly, Jonathan, on this. I mean, it's often when the driver transfer market spices up. Did you want a little bit more excitement in it, getting Max in a different team, or maybe George Russell having to, look for his future elsewhere? Briefly, we've got about 20 seconds or so.
Yeah, I mean, we all love the intrigue. I don't know if the drivers love it that much. Verstappen's clearly, not the sort of driver who thrives on this kind of tittle-tattle speculation. He wanted to put it to bed. I think the fact that Horner left maybe vindicates that decision from Red Bull's point of view as well.
All right, guys, we're going to leave it there. Jonathan Isaan, thank you so much for your time and your insights this evening. We'll see you again very, very soon. If you miss any of the show, another chance to see Back Pages tonight at 1:30 the show. Also available, as ever, as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Join us again Friday night. Our guest will be Jack Ross from The Sun, Mark Ogden from ESPN. And, of course, we are reflecting on that freakish injury to Chris Woakes, day one at the Oval. How much will that affect England going forward?